The organ systems of the body, the digestive system, the cardiovascular system, the urinary system, immune, reproductive systems, these are coordinated by the autonomic nervous system, which alternates between a fight or flight response, or the sympathetic division, and a rest and repose response, or the parasympathetic division. If both of these are normal, then why is chronic stress such a health risk? Well, in part, this can be answered by considering how old humanity is. The autonomic nervous system and the fight or flight response evolved long before modern humans. Homo, the genus, goes back 2.5 million years. Homo sapiens, the species, goes back several 100,000 years. And when we consider what our ancestors used the sympathetic division for, what the fight or flight response is adapted for, it is for short emergencies, such as sprinting away from something, which was dangerous, which could be another group of people, or it could be a saber-toothed cat, or a wild animal that members of the group were trying to hunt for dinner, etc. Either way, these issues tend to resolve quickly. Modern stresses are different, however. Very rarely are we facing lions or bears or wolves or alligators, at least hopefully. Instead, what causes modern people stress are things like a difficult month at work, or a finals week for students, or a term paper, or an upcoming public speech, or relationship problems, etc. But these are problems which can go on for long periods of time, hours, days, months, years, as opposed to the earlier stresses. The sympathetic division of the autonomic nervous system was not meant to deal with stresses which are chronic like this, and use of this ancient system for modern stresses can lead to modern health problems. So, for example, during a short-lived emergency or exercise, releasing more glucose from the liver or lipids from adipose tissue has an advantage. It makes energy molecules more available to muscle. But if one is studying for an exam, one doesn't need this extra glucose and triglycerides, and instead now the higher levels in the blood will increase the risk of weight gain, heart disease, and diabetes. During a short-lived encounter with a wild animal or exercise, it makes sense that the heart beats more frequently and stronger to get more blood to muscles. The respiratory passageways are dilating to bring in more oxygen, and the blood can move away from the skin in case of danger and become thicker, so that if one were cut, the blood would clot faster and you would lose less blood. However, in chronic modern stresses, this leads to high blood pressure, and the ease in clotting then makes heart attack and stroke more likely. During exercise or a short-lived emergency, it makes sense to direct blood away from those systems which aren't going to contribute to you being able to run away from the stressor or fight. And so therefore the digestive system gets less blood, fewer resources. The urinary system, less blood will be filtered to make urine. The immune system gets less blood, the reproductive system, etc. This makes sense during an emergency. You can digest your food, make urine, fight disease, and show interest in your partner later after the emergency has been resolved. However, if the sympathetic division is engaged continually because this is a chronic stress, now one might experience digestive issues because you're not trying to digest your food, you're directing blood away from the digestive system. With less blood and less resources going to the immune system, you're not monitoring your body for infection and cancer the way you were. You might get sick after a very stressful period. Not only if less blood goes to the reproductive system, would it be harder for a man to maintain an erection or a woman to lubricate the vagina, then the decreased steroid hormones produced would then decrease libido and interest in partners. And so these would be consequences of chronic modern stresses. There are other responses which make sense, once again, during exercise or to a short-lived emergency, which might then be a problem in modern settings, such as sweating or having a dry mouth, which makes sense if you're cooling down or directing fluids away from your digestive system. But if you're giving a presentation, then sweating and having a dry mouth might have a disadvantage. Being very tense might lead to then just muscle aches. It's obviously not helping you while you sit at a computer to type the way it would if you were preparing to run. So in the modern world, many predispositions to diseases like heart disease, stroke, cancer result from the inappropriate chronic use of the sympathetic division of the ANS, which had evolved to deal with short-term stresses, not the long chronic modern stresses.